All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Thursday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week so far. We got a jam-packed show for you today. The Warriors and the Kings kind of sort of played a real basketball game last night, playing their starters down the stretch, trying to win. We got a Steph Curry game winner, so obviously we're going to jump on that and break the game down. And then I want to hit on the other four rookies that I haven't hit on yet in preseason. Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller, and the Thompson twins. We'll spend about 5 minutes on each guy. Then I have 2 mailbag questions for the end of the show as well. You guys know the drill before we get started. We launched our new YouTube channel today. Shout out to all of you guys who have already subscribed or right around like 1,500 subs already. I would really like to get that up to 10,000 by the end of next week. So if you guys could just take a second to head over there and hit that subscribe button, that would mean the world to me. Don't forget to follow me on social media this year. I'm going to be doing a lot more video content on Instagram and TikTok as well as Twitter. So follow me there. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. And last but not least, I need mailbag questions. So keep dropping those in the YouTube comments. But all right, let's talk some basketball. So you know, it's funny because over the course of the offseason, the show changes, right? We talk a lot about like draft scouting, free agency and trades, you know, player rankings, maybe historical stuff like we did this last offseason. Then we head into like the preseason phase where it's a lot of like hypothetical stuff, talking about additions to teams, talking about what we expect from teams this year. Even in preseason, because they don't play the stars at the end of the games, we're kind of looking at like, oh, how does this lineup work? How does that lineup work? But no one in the first quarter of a preseason game is really playing that hard compared to the desperation you see at the end of games. So it's hard to really learn all that much. And by far, my favorite part of breaking down the game of basketball is breaking down the phases of the games where things are won and lost. Because like most competitors, after a loss or a win, I always find myself sitting down on the sideline, untying my shoes and stretching, and I'm thinking maybe that play, if it would have gone differently, we would have won or lost. Or if I would have done this differently, we would have won or lost. I always like hyper-focus on those little things. We had a money tournament this last weekend, and we were in the championship game playing against a team from Phoenix, and we were down by 11 in the second half. And our team, the Tucson guys, we played damn near perfect basketball down the stretch and came back to win. And I can't tell you how many times over the last couple of days I've thought back to like specific moments and little plays here, like little extra efforts there from different guys on our team that all made plays down the stretch of that game to win the cash. And like that's my favorite thing about the game of basketball is the process that leads to winning. And so I'm looking forward to breaking down real games so I could talk about how this team won that game or how this team lost that game. And we got a little taste of it last night with the Warriors and the Kings. The Kings came out and kind of gave it to the Warriors for the most part throughout the game. They were actually up 11 with 3 minutes and 38 seconds left. They were doing a really good job with their perimeter defense and frustrating the Warriors and chasing them off the line into traffic. On the other end of the floor, they were having a nightmare of a time guarding the quicker Kings guards like De'Aaron Fox and Davion Mitchell and Malik Monk. The Kings were giving them the business, but as the Warriors are prone to do, they are never dead until the final buzzer sounds. And I can't tell you how many times over the last couple of years I've broken down Warriors games where they've had some sort of massive comeback at the end of the game, usually in the final minutes of the fourth quarter. And then we end up doing like an anatomy of the comeback where we break down play by play exactly how a team won, but a lot of those comebacks were the Warriors. So we're going to do that today. We're going to do the anatomy of a comeback. The Warriors were down by 11 with 4 minutes left. And they bring the ball up the floor, and it starts with the Chris Paul 3. So Clay's running a pick and roll with Dario Saric at the top of the key. And on the play, De'Aaron Fox, who's guarding Chris Paul on the weak side, comes down and tags the roller. Chris does a really nice job of relocating to the top of the key. Why is that important? When the defender turns his back, he can't see you, obviously, right? So like his instinct when a pass is made is to recover back out to where he thinks you're going to be. So relocating can buy you a little extra time on the closeout. So Clay makes a nice pass back to Chris Paul on the wing. De'Aaron Fox has this hectic, crazy closeout at him. Pump fake. De'Aaron Fox jumps out of his shoes. Little easy sidestep. Chris hits the 3. Back to an 8-point game. Next defensive possession, Harrison Barnes is in the weak side corner. Clay kind of stops paying attention for a second. Harrison flashes to the free throw line. Clay closes out on him, gets there in time. Harrison hits a spin move in a post up. Clay walls him up, forces him into a tough shot, gets a stop. Then on the other end of the floor, Andrew Wiggins hits a step-back jump shot over Keegan Murray. I love it when Andrew Wiggins takes shorter jump shots after being physically aggressive towards the rim instead of taking really tough, like step back 22-foot, 20-foot jump shots, right? There was a shot in the first half where Wiggins did a spin move, that same spin move step back he always does, but he took it at 20 feet, and it's just such a difficult shot at that range. I mean, that's the three-point line when you go back when I was playing in college or high school kids now, right? That's just it's a difficult shot. And on this particular move, he hits Keegan Murray with a hard left to right crossover, gets way downhill to 14, 13 feet, then does the pullback into the step back. Now it's a 15-footer with good separation because he made a downhill move. That's a much higher percentage shot. He knocks it down. Now we're at a 6-point game. On the next possession, De'Aaron Fox gets downhill and pick and roll, and Andrew Wiggins is walling him up from behind, but he's riding him a little too close. And again, in those back pressure situations, especially against pull-up shooting guards, it's better for you to give more space and try to bother from behind than to actually get attached to his body because he can just jump and get a call. And fouling was a huge problem for the Warriors all year last year. And again, in this particular game, Steve Kerr actually talked about it after the game. And again, I had a lot of Warriors fans complaining nonstop in the playoffs, the Lakers are getting this whistle. The Lakers are getting this whistle. No, last year, the Warriors were dead last in the NBA at drawing fouls, and they were 23rd in the NBA at committing fouls. They fouled a lot. That was a consistent problem. That's why they lost in the free throw disparity in most games. And so Andrew Wiggins ends up fouling De'Aaron Fox on a jump shot. He ends up going to the foul line, making 1 out of 2, so it's 108 to 101. So on the next possession, this was an interesting possession. So they ran an action that I expect the Warriors to run a lot this year. Chris Paul has the ball on the left wing, and Steph Curry and Dario Saric come to set the double ball screen, right? That was the closing lineup that Kerr went with in this game, which I thought was interesting. He went with Dario Saric over Trayce Jackson-Davis, obviously wanting that extra offensive punch. And then it was Steph and Clay with Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins. That was the group that they went with down the stretch. So Steph sets the first screen. And then Dario Saric sets the second screen. And then as Chris Paul comes off to the elbow, Dario Saric turns and then sets another screen for Steph so that Steph can come off. Now, Kevin Huerter and De'Aaron Fox are the two guards in the action, and they do a really nice job communicating and switching those screens. And so Steph just isn't open, and neither is Dario Saric, right? But on the possession in the switch, Domantas Sabonis ends up picking up Chris Paul, but he's dropping back like he's running a drop coverage that's turned into a switch at this point. By the time he identifies and gets back up, Chris Paul's already up into his jump shot, and that little right elbow 15-foot jump shot Chris is going to make, at least 60% of the time when he's that open. He rises up, knocks it down. Now we're back to a 5-point game. Now, on the very next possession, Sabonis gets a really weak foul call at the rim, rolling, catches on the short roll, just barrels down the lane and does this hard drop step into Dario Saric's chest. Saric just walls him up and absorbs the contact and somehow gets a foul call. I thought that was a bad call. That at that point, Sabonis goes to the line, makes both free throws, is back up to a 7-point game. So on the next possession, the Warriors set up in horns. So now remember, in horns, you've got Chris Paul at the top of the key. You've got, in this case, Saric and Steph at the foul line. And then you've got Wiggins and Clay in the corners. And on this play, Dario Saric is on the left elbow, and he comes over to set a cross screen for Steph. They're trying to get Steph coming across the top. Now, Kevin Huerter is doing what a lot of teams are going to do with the Warriors this season and what a lot of teams have been doing to the Warriors in recent seasons, which is top blocking, right? Top blocking is where you get in between the offensive player and the screen and make it so they have no choice but to reject the screen. So Kevin Huerter's top blocking. Steph actually just goes underneath the pick instead of going over, and Saric does a good job of laying a good screen on Huerter in spite of that top block and getting him tons of separation. Chris hits him on the bounce. Perfect timing for him on the catch to pump fake. Again, that's the Steph Curry bread and butter, right? Is he just has to get enough separation to get your crazy ass to just go out of control closing out, right? He pump fakes, jumps out of his shoes. Steph takes a little a sidestep dribble, knocks down a 3. We're back to a 4-point game. Now, on the next possession, De'Aaron Fox ends up running a pick and roll and Andrew Wiggins recovers, and they end up running a post up. So De'Aaron Fox is posting up Andrew Wiggins on the left block. Now, an important detail, because Fox kind of works his way into the lane and gets a foul call and goes to the foul line. But on this possession, if you watch Wiggins, both of his hands are down low. His hands are in the cookie jar. Now, ideally, if you can, you want to be able to hold up both hands. The refs will usually let you get away with your inside hand with a little bit of contact if you show that left hand. But Wiggins had both hands down. And so when De'Aaron Fox kind of came through with that rake move to go up into the jump shot, he got the foul call. And again, like, to Steve Kerr's point, like, regardless of what, if we call it a grift or whatever you want to call it, that's going to get called just about every single time when you've got your hands down, reaching in essentially on a drive. He's got to show his hands. He's got to, if he wants to be physical, he needs to use that inside hand, right? So he commits the foul. He commits the foul and Fox goes to the line. He makes 1 out of 2. So it's 112, or excuse me, makes 2 out of 2. So it's 112 to 106 with 1:35 left. Next possession, Steph gets fouled off the ball. He makes 2 free throws. So we're back to a 4-point game. Then the Warriors finally get a stop. It's another Fox-Sabonis pick and roll. On the play, Fox gets downhill, but Sarge does a good job of sliding his feet and walling him off. Fox ends up opting for like a fall away 15-foot jump shot, kind of drifting to his right. Andrew Wiggins does a really nice job of identifying that the shot's already going up, and he just locks in with Domantas Sabonis, rides him down underneath the basket, and just gets into like a wrestling match with him and boxes him out. He does his job, peeling off of the pick and roll and boxing out the roll man. The Warriors get the stop. They get the rebound. On the very next possession, the Warriors try to run a double screen for Steph on the left side of the floor, but once again, Kevin Huerter is top blocking. So they've got Steph is starting on the left corner. There's 2 Warriors getting ready to set a screen. 3 Warriors, actually, getting ready to, like, all around the top of the key wing area, trying to set screens for Steph. Kevin Huerter is just literally standing between him and the screens. But the entire right side of the floor is wide open. So Steph reads that and just back cuts out of it and goes down to the right block. Post entry, Steph ends up hitting a 1-leg fadeaway out of the post over Kevin Huerter. Now it's 112 to 110 with a minute left. On the next possession, De'Aaron Fox ends up getting an ISO against Andrew Wiggins on the top of the key and just toasts him to the left and gets all the way to the rim and makes a layup. Again, like the Warriors, and we're going to talk more about this when we get to the Warriors defense in a minute, but they really struggled to guard De'Aaron Fox in this game, and in general have struggled to guard quicker guards because they're not a great perimeter defense team. And you know, again, like this particular situation, like Wiggins is your best perimeter defender, and even he was having trouble guarding De'Aaron Fox without fouling and giving up baskets. He just toasts Andrew Wiggins to the left, ends up making a left-handed layup off the glass. They're back up by 4. So here they run next possession, the Warriors call timeout. They run a sideline out of bounds play. And on this particular play, they have Dario Saric set a couple of picks. And on the picks, Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins both come running off of the picks. But Dario Saric ends up popping. And on the pop, Dario Saric gets the ball back to Steph. Davion Mitchell ends up falling over. Davion Mitchell ends up chaotically closing out at Steph. Once again, what do we expect from Steph in these situations? Pump fake, sidestep, knocks down the 3. So it's back to 114, 113. How many times have we seen that in our lives? Steph Curry pump faking and then making a 3. So now we get another De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis pick and roll. Chris Paul ends up offering like really aggressive help from the left wing at the nail. Davion Mitchell's on the floor. He relocates to the left corner, and he had actually made several threes in this game. He's been shooting the ball pretty well in preseason. They make the kick pass over to Davion Mitchell in the left corner, and he misses the wide open 3. The Warriors get the rebound. Dario Saric gets fouled on the rebound by Sabonis. He goes down with a chance to make 2 free throws to give him the lead, and he misses both. Now the Warriors have to foul. They foul Kevin Huerter. He goes 1 for 2. Now we have the final possession. Steph Curry, straight isolation against De'Aaron Fox on the right block or right wing. Right foot pivot foot, which was really interesting, I thought. Most left-handed players prefer to start with a left foot pivot foot, and most right-handed shooters prefer to use their step back going to the left. It's a huge part of why I train when I train the kids that I train. I always talk to them about doing moves as mirror images, even if you never use them in games, just so that you know the footwork going both ways. It'll make you harder to guard. So if you have the ability to do a hard right jab step into a hard move to the left, stepping back, you want to have the exact same move in reverse. You want to be able to do a hard left jab step, hard dribble to your right, stepping back. And it's a little bit different. I've talked about this show on the show a million times, but you guys heard recently, I believe it was Cam Johnson and JJ Redick talking about the idea of a right-handed shooter going to his right and how you have to square up in midair, which is a very difficult thing to do. That's why a lot of right-handed shooters dribble into jump shots going left and then prefer to go to the rim going right? But like, again, if you can avoid those stereotypical, limitations offensively and have a real counter move for every single situation, you make yourself infinitely harder to guard. So De'Aaron Fox is ball pressuring Steph, right foot, pivot foot. Keeps it simple. One of the best ways to deal with ball pressure in a situation like this is put your head in the way. So Steph kind of bends over and uses his head to kind of create a little bit of space. Hard jab step. On the jab step, De'Aaron Fox gambles twice, which, again, is actually a smart move defensively because if you can disrupt the rhythm of the offensive player by causing them to slightly lose control of the basketball, that's usually enough to cause them to miss a shot. But Steph maintains control, goes to the hard jab step back to his right, and then everything in these step back situations is about leg strength. If you actually watch that play, and if you cut the video right before he goes up into his shot, he's going straight up and down and actually landing a little bit in front of where he jumped. And that's what's crazy because he did a hard step back going to his right. That's leg strength to be able to catch your body weight moving backwards away from the basket and slow yourself down and gather into a jump shot with great lift moving towards the basket from 26 feet, and he knocks it down. Best shooter of all time, and a cool moment in the preseason that we're not used to seeing at this time of year. Chris Paul, Steve Kerr talked to about it after the game in his presser, but he did a really nice job of organizing the team at the end of the game. Now, usually this role falls to Draymond, but the unique advantage of having Chris Paul in this position is he has the ability to get the ball to Steph and Klay in their spots while also making the defense pay for leaving him open. And that is a significant weapon to have in situations like this. Now, you can afford to have, Draymond off the ball setting the solid screens that he's always setting because Chris Paul is a gifted enough passer to kind of operate as the fulcrum in those situations. He made several big plays down the stretch of this game, not just passing the ball, but also scoring the ball for the Warriors' crunch time offense. The Chris Paul-Dario Saric pairing. Chris Paul had a bunch of feeds to Dario Saric and pops and rolls for baskets. I really like this pairing. That was kind of one of the subplots of this game was Chris Paul moved to the bench. And again, I understand that it can be a little weird for a player who started his entire career, but the reality is it actually makes a lot of sense to pair Steph, a hyper-aggressive scorer, with two non-scoring screeners, right? Looney and Draymond. And then have Paul work with Dario Saric, who's a much more aggressive scorer. Why? Because Chris Paul at this phase of his career really doesn't want to shoot unless he has to, unless the coverage truly dictates it. Like at the end of that game, when he came off of that double ball screen and he picks up his dribble at the elbow, Steph and Klay aren't open, Wiggins isn't open, his read is to elevate into that little shot there at the elbow. And so he'll take that and he'll make it. But for the most part, he's looking to pass in these situations. So pairing him off the bench with a big who's looking to score in these roll man situations is actually a really smart way to use him. And as far as starting, it really doesn't matter because at the end of the game, Kerr can make a read and go, hey, I need Chris Paul out there for closing time. Okay, Chris Paul's out there in closing time. But at the same time, if you run into a bigger matchup and you can't afford to play three smaller players out there at the same time, then you can have Chris off sit on the bench during the crunch time situation. Or maybe Klay Thompson doesn't have it tonight. And you end up going with the big, Draymond, Looney front court and Wiggins at the three. And then you go with Chris Paul and Steph in the backcourt. You have options. You have flexibility there. And really, who starts doesn't matter. And it'll be better for Chris to be on the floor during those possessions when they need him to run action. Steve Kerr actually said this before the game. He goes sometimes I just need Chris Paul to run 4 pick and rolls in a row and to take 4 mid-range jump shots. And he's right. That's the thing. It's not the right way to use him with the starting lineup to just have Chris Paul run 4 straight pick and rolls, right? With that group, he's going to operate more as a fulcrum. But then with the bench lineup, you can really bring his offensive IQ and playmaking to bear by having him run with bench groups where he can look to be more aggressive. They ran him a lot with basically Saric, Kuminga. I want to say it was Saric, Kuminga, Klay, and then it might have been Gary Payton that was the fifth guy in that lineup. But they ended up actually playing pretty well with that group. Trace Jackson Davis was kind of a mixed bag, right? There were some bad moments. He struggled a little bit to finish in ball screens running into traffic. You could tell he's still adjusting to the size. He's only 11 for 19 at the rim so far in preseason. There were also a couple possessions where you could tell like De'Aaron Fox or another Kings guard would be getting downhill to finish, and he's just not the rim protector that some of the bigger centers can be. But overall, I thought it was a very positive and impactful performance from Trayce Jackson-Davis. He defended Sabonis extremely well, like legitimately was absorbing his contact, not fouling. I mean, he did get some foul calls. Steve Kerr also talked about that after the game, the whistle that Trayce was getting. But he forced Sabonis into a bunch of misses around the rim. We're used to that being like a Looney or Draymond thing, right? But no, he was getting stops and doing a good job of putting his body between Sabonis and the rim on those rolls. Did a good job boxing Sabonis out and securing defensive rebounds. Made some nice reads in the short roll. He had a big one down the stretch where he made a pass to the corner. And then he finished really well out of the dunker spot. Like when in the roll, it was a little harder for him because he was rolling into traffic. But on plays where like Steph or Clay or Chris were driving to the basket, there were several possessions where Trayce Jackson-Davis was able to operate as a dunker where he could get ahead of steam. And that's where his athleticism took over. He had a really nice dunk on a lob. A dunk. I think there was I can't remember if it was over Sabonis or over McGee, but he had another one out of the dunker spot where he like straight up caught a body. Like he finished pretty well out of the dunker spot. Overall, like I said, I thought it was a positive. And you got to remember, this was basically his first time playing a full game against an NBA All-Star big. And he held his own really well. Like, I genuinely thought he played well. And eventually he will make that adjustment to the NBA length inside and figure out how to finish. Like, maybe it'll be a little pop shot before he gets to the rim, right? Maybe it'll be more passing. He will get better at defending the rim as well with repetition and identifying how to time stuff better. I thought it was a really encouraging performance out of Trayce Jackson-Davis. Jonathan Kuminga. We talked a lot about his upside in preseason, but you saw some of the mistakes last night. He had 5 turnovers. There was a kick-ahead pass to Steph in the first quarter that he had no business throwing. He's forcing some pocket passes that aren't there, or dribbling into traffic and turning it over. Also, defensive awareness stuff. He gave up a couple of buckets just jumping out of his shoes on pump fakes. There was one where De'Aaron Fox caught it on the right wing and just kind of did this really slow pump fake, and Kuminga just jumped out of his shoes, and De'Aaron Fox drove down the lane and got a layup. There was another one, I think it was Keegan Murray early in the game, where he went for a pump fake and ended up giving up a wide open 3 in the corner. And that's kind of the stuff I've been talking about where, like, again, Kuminga's upside, and he shot the ball again well last night. He hit a couple of big jumpers in the fourth quarter. But the reality is like, if he's going to be a guy that the Warriors trust to play, that Steve Kerr trusts to play in crunch time, he's going to have to limit mistakes. And that's something to keep an eye on over the course of the season. Last note on the Warriors before we get to the Kings. They are legitimately susceptible to quickness on the perimeter. That's the weak point in their defense right now. And it's something they're going to have to get better at over the course of the season. That's a huge part of why that series got stretched to 7 games, despite, a lot of people feeling, and me feeling personally, that the Warriors are significantly better than the Kings. And that's that on a nightly basis, they struggle with quickness on the perimeter. And it's something that, another thing that they're going to have to get better at over the course of the year. Moving on to the Kings, De'Aaron Fox is just freaking unbelievably good at this point in his career. He's just so fast. He can consistently beat people off the dribble, get the defense into rotation. He makes the right reads. He's got the shot-making piece. And then his perimeter defense. He was really good throughout this game, defending on the perimeter. Even that final possession against Steph, that's excellent defense against one of the best players in the world. Steph is unbelievable, and he's going to make shots. But again, De'Aaron Fox's perimeter defense kind of started to flash during that Warriors series. I think in general, it's something that the team's going to have to get better at this year. And for the record, overall, I was impressed with the Kings defense, especially on the perimeter. You can tell that's something that they're focusing on more this season, and it's something that they're going to need to be better at if they're going to go on a deeper playoff run than they did last year. Davion Mitchell's jump shot looks good. He's up to 58% effective field goal percentage on jump shots in the preseason. He's also 5 for 9 on pull-up jump shots. Keegan Murray had a big game. He had, early in the game off of a dribble handoff. He had a nice driving dunk over Klay Thompson. Trayce Jackson-Davis on the play kind of shaded a little too close to the roller. That's another possession where like he's going to have to kind of figure out the timing on in his pick and roll drop coverages. But he just drove down the lane, dunked all over Klay Thompson. He had this other, in the late first half, he had this other like right-handed scoop shot off the glass over Trayce Jackson-Davis. That was a really high-level finish. In 13 handoffs this preseason, Keegan Murray scored 20 points. That's 1.54 points per possession. He's also doing a really nice job attacking closeouts at 1.56 points per possession. And that's despite him not really shooting the ball as well off the catch as we're accustomed to seeing. But yeah, overall, I think the Kings have shown some highs and some lows in preseason. I think they're going to go down a level this year in the regular season just because of the fact that I don't think they'll be as healthy as they were last year. And I do think that they were attacking the regular season in a way from an intensity standpoint that they won't this year. So I expect them to drop more down into the play-in area this year. But again, De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk, the ability to beat people off the dribble and defend on the perimeter, that's a legitimate weapon that could give them a chance to beat anybody in a playoff series. The NFL season is going strong, and DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking new customers up with an offer that's even stronger. Bet $5 on any game this week to score $200 instantly in bonus bets. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweeter offer every game day this October. There are 8 games this weekend that have point spreads that are either 3 or smaller than 3. Lots of good betting opportunities for you guys to take advantage of. Get in on the game day greatness. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HOOPS. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet 5 on the NFL. That's code HOOPS, HOOPS, only on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. Licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles in Louisiana. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. All right, let's talk about some rookies. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes on each guy. Let's start with Scoot Henderson. The speed pops right away. His jumper's broke, which we'll talk about in a minute, but he gets really good looks on his pull-up jump shots, especially in pick and rolls and ISOs, and it's because people are all the way back on their heels trying to contain his speed. That's the part that reminds me so much of Russell Westbrook. It's like he just gets really, really good pull-up jump shots. These are not Damian Lillard, I'm getting smothered, I can't believe I got the shot off type of shots like you see from Dame and Steph and guys like CJ McCollum and guys like that. Like, no, he straight up has defenders on his heels, and he's getting to his spots every single time. He's already great in transition. He had 16 points on 14 transition possessions so far in preseason. His rim finishing, it's better than it looks. He's 11 for 19 at the rim, which is just 58%. But he had like 3 or 4 possessions where he saw a rim protector and just was like, and went downhill and just took off into his chest and took the body and and just threw some wild shit up at the rim and we're going to talk about this when we get to the Thompson twins too, but a big thing for rookies is identifying pretty quickly that NBA defenses are really good at making sure they have their help side positioned at the rim, and their interior size is just a hell of a lot bigger than you're accustomed to seeing, right? And there was a play there where Scoot Henderson straight up challenged Walker Kessler at the rim, and it's dude, he's standing there waiting for you. You're probably not going to finish that. And so rim decisions for a lot of these athletes are going to be things to keep an eye on over the course of their careers. But you take those possessions out, if he makes a couple better decisions there, his rim finishing goes up into the mid-60s, high 60s, which is where you expect a super athletic guard like him to be. He also made both of his floaters in preseason. That's another option he can use when he's running into rim protectors like that. The jumper. Solid in catch and shoot situations. He's actually 5 for 10 on catch and shoot threes. You could see that his lift and his release is just a lot smoother in those situations. But he's just 2 for 16 on pull-up jump shots. And almost every miss has been short off the front of the rim. He's kind of got a little bit of a hitch in his gather where he's losing power. And again, pull-up shooting in particular is harder than regular shooting because you're transmitting a change of direction into a straight up and down jump shot. And so there has to be really good energy transfer, meaning from your feet to the handle, through the gather, up through the release. You can't have things that cause you to lose power. That's where a hitch can cause you to fail to get the ball over the front of the rim, right? He's going to learn over his time in the NBA that he's got to have a certain amount of fluidity to be a good pull-up jump shooter, because that's the only way he's going to be able to consistently make the shots that the coverages are going to give to him. Passing and pick and roll, the Suns and Jazz were offering a ton of nail help and strong side help. So most of his passes in pick and roll have just been basic swing passes. But again, those are the right reads. And if he's as good in pick and roll getting downhill as we know he can be, a lot of teams are going to have to offer nail help and strong side help. He did make a really nice skip pass against New Zealand, a pick and roll on the right wing where he threw like this wild one-arm rifle pass that hit the shooter in the corner wide open. So that's an example of some of the higher end potential there. The pocket passes have been tough with how teams have guarded them, but they have had some success when they've cleared the side. So like they had some success this preseason with like Ayton and Scoot on the left side of the floor, all three shooters spaced out, basically short corner, wing, and then making it so that it's a lot harder to offer that extra help or tag the roller in pick and roll. On defense, he's not devoting a ton of energy there right now. He should eventually be a great a ball pressure guard and screen navigator because he's that kind of athlete. But right now he's kind of hanging back and letting guys get comfortable. He's not really pressuring the ball, slow to get around screens. There was a play against the Jazz where he kind of did like this crazy hop step to get around a Walker Kessler screen to pressure from behind. And that was kind of an example to me of what he's capable of being. But right now I just don't think he cares too much about it. But that'll happen in time, especially as he gets sick of losing at the NBA level. Like all of the good guards in the NBA that end up impacting winning at a high level end up eventually defending at a pretty high level. Like even Steph, who is the best offensive player of his era, legitimately turned himself into an average to above average defensive player when he was in his prime. Overall, he's about where you'd expect a freaky young athletic guard to be. Like no one can guard him. He's just not making shots, but he's getting to his spots. And when he actually gets to the point where he can consistently make the shots, that's when the results will follow. And the catch and shoot numbers are really encouraging. That to me is a great example of what. And we're going to talk about this with Brandon Miller because it's been the opposite, where like he's made his pull-up jump shots, but he's been missing his catch and shoots. And like a lot of players struggle with that dichotomy. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if he adds that fluidity off the bounce with his jumper, everything else will open up, and the defense will come in time with experience in the NBA. All right, moving on to Brandon Miller. Classic on-the-ball player learning how to play off the ball, right? This is a guy who's used to having the ball in his hands. 5 for 5 on pull-up jump shots in preseason. 2 for 4 on floaters. He actually has like a really nice push shot. He had this play attacking a closeout where he did like a wild left-to-right Euro step into a push shot in the lane. Like that floater to me is a real weapon, especially at his size, and you could just tell he has really good touch on it. But he's just 1 for 11 on catch and shoot jump shots. And again, we were talking about this earlier with Scoot, but a lot of players, young players in particular, will have a different rhythm for their pull-up jump shot and for their catch-and-shoot jump shot. And it's funny because over time, all basketball players kind of morph into one form that they trust in those situations, right? Like I was talking about this with Steph in his game winner, but a lot of times like you'll see that like if you freeze frame a pull-up jump shot or a movement jump shot right at the point of release, a lot of times if you just look at the end of the shot, it ends up looking just like their catch and shoot, because what they're doing is they're actually using their handle and their footwork to get to a spot where they can rise up and take like a standard jump shot that they're used to taking. That's like the next level of shot making off of jump shots in the NBA, is like figuring out how to make it so that you have the same release regardless of shot type. But again, like it'll get there. Like the fluidity is there. That's why he's making all the pull-up jump shots. He's so used to operating from dribble combination into footwork into jump shot. That's something he's been doing his whole life, and he's already great at that. And so when he gets to the point where he has like a muscle memory that he trusts, taking the end of his release from his pull-up jump shot and basically turning it into a quick dip and lift catch and shoot jump shot, he's going to be super reliable there as well. And the fluidity just demonstrates his upside as a scorer. He's done a really nice job in preseason of setting up his man for screens. And again, that's like getting your man caught on the screen is half the battle. And the only way you're going to do that, especially against good perimeter defenders, is by getting them to lean one way away from the screen to start. You got to hit him with some sort of in and out or dribble move away from the screen to get them to lean that side so that you can actually get them into trail position so that you can get downhill. And that's something Brandon's already good at. He's at 1.23 points per possession in pick and roll in preseason, including passes. Making the swing pass against Nail help. Again, we talked about that with Scoot. Like a lot of these, all of these rookies that I've been watching, I've just watched a lot of footage of preseason basketball, and like it's kind of crazy how many teams are just really aggressively helping at the nail. And again, what that means for those of you guys who don't realize what I'm saying is like if the ball handler's on the left wing and the screener comes up to set the screen, but you have a shooter on the right wing, if his defender basically sinks down to the elbow, he's going to be in a position where he can shut down that action. And so you have to make that swing pass and show a willingness to consistently knock down that shot. Otherwise, they're going to be able to defend your actions 3-on-2. And your job as the pick and roll ball handler there is to make that read. And that's a read that Brandon's been making in preseason. He's shown a little bit of potential on defense with back pressure in pick and roll. It's been a mixed bag. Obviously, he's a rookie. But he's had a couple possessions where he's legitimately bothered guys from behind because he's got that length. And again, like that's the upside. Like I think Brandon Miller's going to struggle a lot as a rookie because he's learning how to play off the ball more. He's on a team that already has guys like Terry Rozier and LaMelo Ball that have the ball in their hands a lot. This is a team that probably is going to try to win a little bit more this year, right? So like he's going to have to earn his minutes through winning impact. But long term, Brandon Miller has the upside to be like Paul George, a fluid scoring wing that can be a top tier defensive player on the other end of the floor, right? And so that's why I liked the pick of him at number 2. Obviously, giving yourself the long term upside with the timeline that you're on, I thought it made sense. All right, Amen Thompson. The shot making is a mess. He's 2 for 7 on catch and shoot jumpers, 2 for 7 on pull up jumpers. Just 9 for 20 at the rim. 9 for 20. That's pretty wild for an athlete like him. Same kind of thing I was talking about with Scoot, like just trying crazy shit all the time. And I mean, Ausar had similar issues as well. Ausar was 3 for 13 at the rim, which we'll get to in a minute. But it's an adjustment for a guy that's used to just being able to jump over everybody to understand that, the help is always going to be there and it's probably going to be a gigantic human. And it's actually more important for me to make good decisions when I get to the rim. Right. And that's stuff that'll come in time. But there have been some like explosively athletic plays in there. There was one where, got a pass from Dylan Brooks out of the right corner and Herb Jones is on him. And he like does a rip through move on Herb Jones and just toasts him off the dribble. Herb Jones is chasing him from behind, trying to block him. Brandon Ingram comes over and helps underneath the rim, and Ausar just goes up underneath the rim and just throws it down on the literally throws it down through the rim on the opposite end of the basket. Just an unbelievable, looked like prime Tracy McGrady type of stuff there out of Amen Thompson. The passing has popped immediately, as we all know. That was one of Amen's strengths in the draft. So many young ball handlers like panic and pick and roll. Like they come off the screen and they feel like they need to shoot or pass like right away, right? And Amen is just moving in slow motion, methodically getting downhill. There was a sequence he had with Boban earlier in preseason where like he set up Boban for a couple of dunks in both pick and rolls. It was like they happened in slow motion. And by the time Amen actually made the pass, he's down south of the block. And that goes to show you like how many pick and roll ball handlers have the patience at that age to actually work downhill and wait for a play to develop and look for the kill pass and not just the swing pass, right? He looks under control in pick and roll. He's got this hook pass too that he can throw across the floor to shooters in the weak side corner. We've seen that a bunch in preseason. But make no mistake, like everything with the Thompson twins in general is about upside. Like both of them are just truly astounding athletes in every single way. Like quickness, changing direction, vertical pop, right? He's getting to his spots easily. It reminds me of Scoot Henderson. Like Amen's made a couple of pull-up mid-range jump shots and like they're open shots. And if he can get to the point where he can knock that shot down, it could be a weapon because again, like with his athleticism and with the way teams have to protect the rim against him, he's going to be able to get good looks from the mid-range. And on defense, the Rockets have done a lot of switching with him, but I could actually see him turning into an excellent screen navigator the way that Ausar has been so far in preseason. All right, moving on to Ausar Thompson. Similar to Amen, the shot making's been a mess. He's 1 for 4 on catch and shoot jumpers, and he's actually a better shooter than Amen, but he hasn't shot well in preseason. 3 for 13 at the rim. And again, like just comes down to rim decisions, identifying that like, hey, like, you can't just elevate over everybody like you did with Overtime Elite, right? Like it's got to be a little bit more of a decision-making process in the NBA at the center position, especially in the regular season when every team is going to play a giant human being just to eat innings and grab rebounds and protect the rim in their drop coverages that they conservatively run over the NBA season. They're going to try to give up more jump shots and take away those things at the rim. So rim decisions are just a huge part of the game for these young athletes. But he's been a nice connective piece on offense. He's cutting when he sees openings. He's passing the ball well. He's made some nice reads in pick and roll. He had this like really nice wraparound pass to Jalen Duren in his first preseason game. He had this left-handed hook pass to the top of the key in a different pick and roll in preseason. But like the biggest and most impressive thing so far with Ausar has been his defense. He has applied ball pressure. He's clearly committing his energy to that end of the floor because he knows that's what the team needs out of him. He navigates screens insanely well. There was this play against Oklahoma City where he's guarding Jalen Williams. It's top of the key ball screen. Chet sets the screen on the left side. And Ausar literally somehow sandwiches himself in between the screen and just completely shuts it down. Jalen Williams ends up backing out and rescreening. Then Ausar just like lightning quick just slides right back underneath the screen and catches Jalen Williams on the drive right at about the top of the key. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is true top tier perimeter defender potential that we're seeing from this guy just because of his absurd lateral quickness. And like it's been really good throughout preseason. Aside from the end of the Oklahoma City game, the game where he made the game tying three in the corner, I thought he got a little tired down the stretch of that game, and you could tell he kind of let up defensively. But outside of that, I think he's defended really, really well. And like his upside is potentially even higher than Amen because of the fact that he's got better form on his jump shot. Like Amen Thompson's jump shot progression might take a lot longer. He might even have to deconstruct his form a little bit. Ausar's like ready to go right now, and he looks really, really good so far in preseason. Going to be a fun season for the Pistons. I'm going to try to cover them a little bit throughout the year. All right, let's get to the mailbag. So the first question is from Felipe. How long does it take you to prepare a video like this one? Been watching games, writing down, between watching games, writing down notes, etc. If it's not asking too much, what does your normal day look like? So it depends because I have like basketball activities outside of that, right? So like during the majority of the season on Mondays and Fridays, I do workouts for the high school team that I coach at. Obviously, with me having to work so much at night, I'm not really affiliated with their day-to-day evening practices just because I can't be there. But I will. I train the kids every Monday and Friday morning and do primarily skill development. So like on Mondays and Fridays, I wake up and I go to the gym and I'm there for an hour and a half with those kids, right? I also do a lot of workouts and basketball stuff with players here around town that sometimes happens during the middle of the day. But generally speaking, whether it's like after a workout or right when I wake up, the first thing I do is I wake up, I make a cup of coffee, and I start watching film. And like I literally watch, depending on the day, depending on how many games I'm covering, some days it's 3 hours of film, some days it's 4 or 5 hours of film, some days it's even crazier than that. During the postseason, it gets insane because like a lot of times during the regular season, for the sake of my sanity and my marriage, I won't watch the games the night of. I'll watch them the following morning, right? But then during the preseason, it's both. Like I'm watching them as they're happening that night, and then I'm waking up in the morning and I'm watching film to try to do like you remember how I've done in the past where I'll do like the instant reaction and then I'll do like the tape breakdown and then I'll do the instant reaction and I'll do the tape breakdown. So like there's just a lot of film watching. Fortunately, I have a lot of tools at my disposal. So like I use this service called Synergy that I actually used to use when I was a player in college that I used to use to scout opponents. So like I used to use Synergy to like, I'd be like, I was the best perimeter defender on my last college team at Arizona Christian. And so, like, I would just look up every single clip and pick and roll and ISO that the guy I was guarding the next game and just try to get a feel for what that player's tendencies were, right? And it's funny because, like, now that software is, like, one of the biggest weapons that I have to make my job easier now. And so I can watch full games on there without commercials, which makes it easy. And then, like, when I'm doing scouting, I can filter through to certain play types, and it helps me to just increase the efficiency of that process. And then I get really good data from that service as well. But like, essentially I'm just taking notes as I'm going. I use notes pretty extensively while I'm actually prepping for the video. But depending on the video, a lot of times I don't use my notes as much, but it just kind of helps for me just to kind of transcribe my thoughts so that they're just kind of really put together in my head so that I can do the show. And like, it depends, like depending on how sharp I'm feeling that day. Sometimes I don't use my notes barely at all. And then other times I'm like having to refer to them more frequently. It just kind of depends on how much, how awake I'm feeling that particular, how it goes with the ups and downs of your brain fog and stuff like that. But that's pretty much a typical day. I usually finish, like right now it's 2:35 p.m. and I've been doing this all day. But I usually finish in the early, late afternoon period. And then, my wife gets home around 5 or 6 and then we hang out, during the regular season. And obviously during the regular season, we're going to hit maybe 2 or 3 big games a week. So like obviously opening night, we're going to probably do work at night a lot during opening week, but like during the actual flow of the regular season, like we'll just target like a specific Wednesday night game or a specific Sunday afternoon game or a specific Thursday night game. And we'll work at night for those, but then we'll go for the morning during the other shows. Now, last mailbag question. Longtime viewer, I want to know how you got your start in media. Sorry if you have answered this question before, but what is your background in basketball? What levels did you play? Thank you. Love the show so much. I learned a lot about the game I love from you. So I have given this spiel on the show before, but I'll do it again because it's been about 6 months. But for the people who have joined the show recently who didn't know, I was a late bloomer. My family was a baseball, football family. I didn't actually start playing basketball until about halfway through high school. And I was very tall, but I was also very unathletic at that point because I grew super fast. I grew like 6 inches in one summer. And so as a result of that, I was very uncoordinated and I kind of moved around like Bambi. And so I was just a really, really bad high school basketball player. The story I always tell is I ended up not playing a single minute on senior night. There were 6 seniors on my high school team my senior year, and 5 of them started that game, and I didn't play a single minute. But that I don't blame anybody for it. I was legitimately that terrible. And but I really fell in love with the game over that period. And I basically just started playing every single day from that point forward. And eventually I grew into my body, and I actually ended up being super lucky to have a very athletic frame. So I'm about 6'6" with a 6'10", 6'11" wingspan. And I could jump out of the gym when I was younger. I was about 205 pounds. Now I'm up closer to like about 230, and I play more of a power game. But like back then I was like this freak athlete. And so eventually, once the stuff started to click for me and I got to the point where I could shoot a little bit, I actually was a decent college basketball player, more in a role player context. In JUCO, I was a scorer. I had like my career high was 31. I had like 6 or 7 20-point games. I was a really good rebounder in college. I was top 3 in my conference in rebounding 2 of the seasons. I had a 20 rebound game. But once I got to Arizona Christian and started playing in a real college basketball conference, I basically was a role player. I would guard the other team's best player and go stand in the corner. So wasn't much of a player when I was in college, but I was fortunate enough to have my school paid for. But it's interesting because I've always had this crazy chip on my shoulder. And so after college, I just kept practicing and kept practicing and kept practicing. And it's crazy because now I'm in my early 30s. I'm 32, and now I'm like a guard, and I can dribble and shoot really well. And I have a much higher level offensive game than I did when I was in college. And it's funny too because like I look back at my college film and I look back at my college production, and I really was bad. I was kind of a bad basketball player relative to what I am now. So it's kind of funny because I constantly have people, when I have internet trolls go look up, my college stats or something like that and see a bad shooting game or a bad shooting season or something like that. But like at the end of the day, I was bad back then. I don't know what else to tell you. Like I wasn't a very good basketball player back then. But I always loved the game. When I was done, I just worked a regular job. I went to Verizon Wireless and I sold cell phones, and I eventually managed to sell a sales team there. But then one day I decided that I wanted to do something in basketball for the rest of my life. And so I was looking into coaching. I was looking into playing overseas. It was really hard for me to get an overseas gig, even though I had become a good player, just because I had no tape or any sort of, I had no stats that I could show people. Like they didn't care that I could score in JUCO because it was clear from NAIA that I couldn't score at that level, right? So it was one of those things where I had a really hard time getting good offers. I had like a half dozen offers to go play for small amounts of money, like $200-300 a week. But like, what was I going to do? Give up my high-paying management job at Verizon to go make $300 a week playing basketball in like Lithuania or something, you know what I mean? So like I never ended up taking any of those offers, and I eventually just decided that playing wasn't really in the cards for me anymore. And so then I kind of turned my attention towards media. And shout out Jason Maples. One day, Jason Maples, big Lakers fan. He used to have he still has a podcast called Temple of Hoop. But one day he invited me on his podcast, and Twitter used to be the place where I'd go talk about basketball, just because my wife, even though my wife played in college, she doesn't really like basketball that much anymore. And my friends aren't really basketball fans. So like Twitter was a place where I'd go just to like talk about basketball. And one day Jason Maples invited me on his podcast, and I went on and I just absolutely loved it. And then I was like, okay, this is what I got to do. So like that night, I literally ordered a microphone and created a podcast called the Jason Timpf Podcast, and basically started breaking down the NBA and just doing like Periscope streams and putting it on a podcast feed and marketing it through Twitter. And then I kind of had like two podcasts, because like I had my solo podcast where I'd cover the whole league, but then I partnered with this guy named Raj who covered the Lakers, and I basically just did Lakers coverage on the side. So it was like kind of half and half, right? And we ended up taking off through Twitter Spaces, which is like one of the most powerful algorithms that exists. Because like the way Twitter Spaces works is like if I run a space and all my followers can see the space at the top of the Twitter feed, well, any one of you guys who joins that space, all of your followers now will see that space on the top of the Twitter feed. And so as a result, like it could grow like wildfire. And so we were doing post-game coverage. So like Raj and I would just go on right after games. And essentially like we would like, this was the Russell Westbrook season. So it was like a complete shit show, right? And the Lakers are weird. I've always found that like the bigger fan bases that are more traditional fan bases that have been around forever, they kind of are more engaged during the bad times. And then like the hot button bandwagon fan bases are more engaged during the good times, right? Like I've seen that just in the difference between the Warriors and Lakers fans over the last couple of years. But like that Russell Westbrook season was huge for Lakers fans because it was just a complete shit show. And one day we ended up getting like 7,000 people at the same time in a Twitter space, and the app crashed. And I woke up the next morning and I got someone from the Volume actually contacted me. And at the time, like Raj wanted to become a credentialed Lakers guy, and I wanted to cover the whole league. And so it made sense for me to go on my own, because obviously now, like we started as Lakers Tonight, but the plan was always to cover the whole league. And we ended up switching to Hoops Tonight within a couple of months. And Raj now is a dude who covers the Lakers with Vinay Kilawala, and they do a really nice job. And yeah, the rest is history. The Volume has done a really nice job there. I think the Volume is kind of ahead of the curve in terms of just understanding what works in the modern media landscape, which is like instant reactions, like marketing to your like just a simple process of like putting the stuff that everyone wants to see at the beginning and then doing more of the niche stuff on the back end. Like that's a big thing that works for us, is like we talk Lakers, Warriors, Celtics, Knicks, all the big teams at the front of the show. And then I can do something like talk for 7 minutes about Ausar Thompson at the end of the show, and it's not that big of a deal, right? Like that's kind of the beauty of it. And then everything gets out quickly. It's a lot of social media marketing. They take advantage of TikTok. They take advantage of YouTube. Like I think YouTube is one of the best algorithms out there. I think that the Volume does a really nice job with their YouTube channel of driving traffic. So like, I just feel really lucky. Obviously, I was a huge Colin Cowherd fan growing up. When I was managing at Verizon, I literally used to listen to Colin Cowherd every single day when I was going to work, like every single day. So it was surreal for me to get to work for him. And then, obviously we started doing the shows together during the Western Conference Finals back in 2022. And now I've done like 25 shows with him. And like, it's just crazy that like I get to regularly work with Colin Cowherd. I feel extremely fortunate. It's been a wild ride, to say the least. The biggest advice I could give to anybody who wants to get into the business right now, and again, like I always want to be careful with this kind of stuff to emphasize that like what works for me might not work for you, and everybody's got a different kind of vibe, right? And so like you kind of have to make adjustments based on what your situation is. Like in general, what I would say is, like, take advice from everybody and then kind of pick and choose what works for you, right? That's kind of what I've done since I've gotten in the business. And like the biggest thing that I would say is take advantage of the free tools that are available to you. So most of you already have a computer. I use Mac because it's easy, but most of you already have a computer. You can get a microphone on Amazon for relatively inexpensive. You can record during the day if you can, and you don't have to worry about lighting. But like if you end up working during the day and you need to do your podcast at night, you can get some lighting online, relatively inexpensive. And then literally everything else from there, the tools are free. Anchor by Spotify is a podcast platform that is free. Running a YouTube channel is free. YouTube's algorithm is free marketing. The more watch time you get, the more the algorithm recommends your content to other people, right? Like going to TikTok. Like TikTok, I've used to grow my Star Wars podcast with my buddy Luke. Like we've gotten a ton of traffic from TikTok just by taking clips of the show, editing them, and throwing them on this platform where they can get traction from a free algorithm. Instagram Reels is another way to do that, right? So like at the end of the day, like make content and put it out with the free tools that are out there. But lean into who you are. Don't try to be someone else. Find your kind of specific niche. That like a lot of people tried to tell me how to cover the game of basketball. And all I've done is just do it the way I want to. And it's worked because I'm doing something that is truly who I am. I'm not trying to be someone else. Like I've had a lot of people be like, oh, don't try to become hot take guy or become hot take guy. It's like, I just haven't needed to, right? Like why would I try to be ESPN First Take when I'm not ESPN First Take, right? Like find out what your niche is and just lean into that, right? And then last but not least, put in the work. Like this is the upside of having all these free tools available has a downside. And the downside is that a lot of people are doing this, right? Like every team has 20 to 30 guys that are doing that. And so that's not a bad thing. It just means you have to find a way to separate yourself. And so all I would say is put in the work. Like when there are all these options, you're competing for people's attention. And so content quality is what survives in these situations. And so really lean into like separating yourself through the hard work. Like don't cut corners. Don't put out content if you don't believe it's good content, right? And then from there, the free tools will carry you the rest of the way. But yeah, so hopefully that answers your guys' questions. Like I'm always down to talk things that are not basketball at the end of the show. Again, that's the freedom of being able to market the way that we do. Keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments, and we'll continue to hit them at the end of the shows throughout the season. Going to take the rest of the weekend off unless KD versus LeBron tonight ends up being super interesting, in which case I might hit that tomorrow morning. Otherwise, we're going to do a season preview on Monday, like a big picture like predictions show, and then Tuesday night, game breakdowns, NBA regular season. All right, guys, I appreciate you, and I will see you either tomorrow or after the weekend.